Welcome back to Car-Pinionated, our weekly show about cars, the car industry, and driving in general. And we have some opinions thrown in. And tonight is another opinion-filled show. You will
Hmm.
get extra opinions, right, Glenn?
Yes, yes. It's like a bonus. It's our show with more opinions, like it's NutraSweet or something tagged on it.
All right. All right. So what we're talking about tonight is cars that miss the mark.
Mhm.
Those cars that you thought, oh, that's gonna be great. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be really cool. Awesome. Oh, that didn't
Hmm.
that didn't land as well as I wanted it to. And so, Glenn, why don't you start us off?
All right. Well, I'm going to say that historically speaking, I think that this category of automobile was first crystallized by the Ford Edsel. So let's go all the way back to then, because I think the Ford Edsel was the first car truly hyped up to be the next big thing, and it just that's the car that missed the mark. It
Right.
set the benchmark. Yes.
To be clear, it was an
Yeah.
Edsel. It was a division in Ford.
Oh, right, right. It was made by Ford, but it was never the Ford Edsel. It was just an
Yeah,
Edsel,
right.
right? Because I think they thought this is the beginning of a whole new division. It's going to be so cool.
Yep.
And as it turned out, it was a crashing failure. But I think I just wanted to throw that car out there because it is the one that seemed to, start the whole idea behind this, and that something that hyped up and that in such a great idea at the automaker turned out to be a complete not good idea with the American public.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, sort of the avenue we're going down. There's a lot of ways to define how a car can miss the mark: design, sales, just general public opinion, quality, all of these things. And all of them can cause the arrow to go flying off and miss the the arrow thing, the bullseye, not outside, boom, miss the dartboard. How's that? Okay. So to that end, I want to mention like the 1980s version in my mind of the Edsel, and a car that is constantly trashed for missing the mark, which is the Cadillac Cimarron. Now, we've mentioned this car before on this very show.
Mhm.
And all it was that Chevy introduced the Cavalier, which was really an okay little car. I mean, there was really nothing
They were
wrong
fine.
with the Cavalier on a level of being a decent, inexpensive economy car. Were there better cars out there? Sure, there were. Of course, there were. But the Cavalier fit its niche. It sold fairly well, and it meant it
And
did what it was
the
meant to
whole
do.
line, the
Yeah.
J2000,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
eventually the Skylark,
Right.
right? It was the Skylark, and then
Right.
was it, it wasn't the Omega, was it?
It
Oh,
was, I think, the olds was around for a
yeah,
little while. Yeah.
yeah. I
And
don't think it was the Omega, whatever the Oldsmobile was, and I'll put it
right,
down below here.
right.
Um, yeah, no, go
But
ahead.
some genius at GM had the idea of taking this Cimarron and taking the Cavalier and gussying it up and rebadging it as a Cadillac without doing any really profound work on the interior or the dynamics of the car or any of the mechanics on it. And it was, they did tart it up a little bit. It wasn't an unattractive car, but it was a boxy little four-door sedan in the Cadillac showroom. And just how is that an idea? It is
Yeah,
it's not only missing the mark, it's showing that the people who thought that there was a mark to hit were aiming off into outer space. They weren't even paying attention. So the car was a colossal failure. It didn't sell. And it wasn't, for all intents and purposes, it wasn't a terrible car. It just wasn't a Cadillac, you know.
right,
It,
right,
it was
exactly.
not it was
It,
not what it was supposed to be.
right. It was expensive for
Yeah,
what you were getting.
right.
And people weren't shopping at a Cadillac dealership for small cars.
No, no, it just it was just not a good idea. And if I can just punctuate that by saying that I have a second entry that did almost the same exact thing, and that would have been the 2001 Jaguar X-Type,
Hmm.
which was pretty much the same thing. It was a Ford, what was the Contour here in the United States, that had been gussied up by Jaguar and thrown out there as a Jaguar, and it was really just underneath just a very, very mediocre Ford. The Contour was not a great car to begin with. And so all the underpinnings, most of the mechanics, and this was back when Ford and Jaguar were, like, did Ford own
Yeah.
the larger portion of
Yeah,
Jaguar
it
at that?
was part of the premium auto group, I think.
Right, right.
It was
But it
it
was
was Jaguar, Land Rover, Lincoln, Mercury, and then Volvo,
right, right.
I think.
And
Yeah.
Mazda to some extent too, but
Right, but
it
Mazda,
was
no, Mazda was in kind of the regular auto group.
right, right. It made so much sense, but
Yeah.
this certainly didn't. It people, again, Jaguar has a different language and a different aesthetic and a different price point than a Ford, and people stayed away from this car because they got near it and they went, "Wait a second, this is kind of cheap," you know, and it wasn't the worst looking car on the road for sure, but it's still, if you squinted, it looked like the Ford Contour, which was just its heritage. So those two, for the same reason, get my stamp of anti-approval as missing the mark. So,
Okay. All right. So the first one I'm gonna go with is a car that I was really sad to see it miss the mark. And that was the fourth generation Taurus SHO or Taurus Show.
mm,
And when Ford announced that they were coming, that we're doing an SHO, people got really their high hopes of like, oh, the ones in the 90s were just awesome
yeah,
vehicles, 80s and 90s, the Yamaha V6, the Yamaha V8, it just, the handling, it was great cars that still today have this, mystique and passion behind them, right? Great, you know the the last gen Taurus had a good underpinnings, that
mm,
D1 platform, I think it is,
mm,
which was underneath a lot of cars. A Volvo, I think it's where it originated. The um, Explorer, I think, so a lot of different vehicles that they made, and it landed, and it really was just a luxury, sporty looking Taurus, which is fine. And as I was researching this, I'm like, wow, those are not very expensive, and you could get an all-wheel drive one, and I would look really good in that. And now I'm I'm pricing out, 8-year-old Taurus SHO, 10-year-old Taurus SHOs. And like, that's probably a bad idea. But I think it's a sharp car. The
sure, sure.
guy 2 doors down has one, and well, that is it's pretty cool. But what people expectations were was not met. Clearly not met.
Okay. All right. So this one, we may get some hate mail or differing opinions, which is fine. You can differ. Don't be hateful.
Oh,
Feel free to let me know you differ. Don't be hateful.
sure.
But and this one, it's a little, we have to dive into this a little bit, but the 2012 US only VW Passat
Okay.
4-door sedan. Um, Not a bad car in
Hmm.
any way, shape, or form. I
No.
don't need to put down the vehicle at all. From a design standpoint, uh, a nice looking car, maybe a little on the understated side, maybe a little too understated.
As many VWs in that era were.
Right, exactly. And we were getting some pretty loud, obnoxious looking cars, so to have something a little bit more elegant or a little understated, not a bad idea. I've always felt like it was a nice looking car. It was a little bit bigger than most of the cars in its class, and VW was very aggressive on the pricing to make sure that this car did not get expensive. Uh, it it wasn't a complete sales flop. I mean, the car was around until 2022. Its peak year was 2012, which I think was its second year in, and they sold 117,000 of them. Its lowest year was 2019, where they only sold 14, and they put it out of production in 2022. So why is this a miss? It's a miss because VW had this grand idea that this car was going to be the pinnacle of them making a major resurgence back into not only the US, but the worldwide car market. They had a big plan that they were going to become the biggest automaker. And it was a car like this one that was going to be a shining example of that, the fact that they were going to do it. It's it's bigger than everything in its class. It's less money. Why wouldn't people buy it? Here's why people didn't buy it. 2012, what was happening? We were shifting away from sedans and sport coupes. That was the beginning. The other reason, we already have some profoundly good, solid sedans that have a storied history of being terrific cars. I'm talking specifically
And
about the
durable.
Honda Accord and to some extent the Toyota Camry.
Mhm.
In that really good year of the Passat where they sold 117,000, the Accord sold 331,000 in the US.
Mhm.
There it is, VW. That's why it's the miss. It didn't captivate the market. It didn't get that, that sterling will never break down reputation. And it was it was a decent car. It
Mhm.
was a decent car, but it wasn't that shining example, and it wasn't what they thought. It just didn't captivate the American public. It just didn't. It was never that, wow, what a car. It was a car,
Mhm.
and I think they were banking on the fact that it had an almost tangible mediocrity to it,
Mhm.
was what people were going to love about it. And no,
I I would
it's
argue, not, I don't know as mediocrity. I would
right,
say that
right,
it was, it's a relatively invisible car.
right.
I'm surprised that it lasted until 2022. I did
Yeah,
not know that.
yep.
And I like to think I know something about cars, but this just didn't rise to
Mhm.
that point.
Yeah,
Didn't rise to that point.
they were making them in Tennessee,
That's
specifically for
a plant they built specifically for that
right,
car.
for this car, right. And honestly, I think what killed it was, just about anybody who reviewed cars said, "Hey, not a bad car. The Accord is better."
Mm,
That's it,
yep.
and the Accord has this incredible story behind it
And
as,
right.
you know,
People who
it
don't know
just
cars know what an Accord is. They know what a Camry
right,
is.
right, right.
And
So,
like they're like feel safe walking into a Toyota dealership, you
right,
know.
right, right. Whereas VWs are a little funky.
Mhm.
They can be a little prone to trouble sometimes, not always. I'm a fan of the VW mark. I would sooner drive a VW over a Honda any day, but the car didn't hit the mark that they were hoping for. So
Mhm.
that's why I bring it up. It's really not a bad car. It's not a bad car in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
I've driven in one. It's a nice size car. You really feel that extra room that you got in it. It rode well. It had a little problem with this anonymity that I think just killed it. So, not a complete utter failure, but not the rousing success that VW was hoping for.
Bring us back to yesteryear.
Mhm.
Um, Beloved Jeep Cherokee XJ. you know,
Mhm.
will go anywhere, do anything, flip upside down, still keep running, whatever, right? But it's really long in tooth and it needs some updating because interior wise it's rather smushed, right? And so Jeep says, we have your back. It's called the Liberty, and it comes out, and boy, everyone goes, oh no.
What? Yeah. Mhm.
You know, uh, odd styling,
Uh-huh.
uh, dimensionally, and I've never compared the two, but dimensionally, it looks smaller and taller, which
Yeah.
then led to it had a tendency to tip over that first model year, and they had to fix that.
Mhm.
Um, just didn't strike anyone as being a, a decent replacement for a beloved vehicle. That to this day, the XJ is very popular, and it's
Sure.
hard to find a nice one that hasn't been, made into a snowplow or something like that. But yeah, that first generation Liberty was
Mhm.
kind of and saddled by that period of time in Chrysler where they were being merged with Daimler, and well, we can make all those parts really cheap and we'll put them there, and you'll have
Yeah.
to look at them on the dashboard forever. um so it wasn't a good time for Jeep, or the company in general, but that Liberty was just a terrible,
Mhm.
terrible
Yep.
looking.
That's
the
a great one.
second the second gen, there's some cars that I feel like would have been more successful if the second gen had been the first gen,
Yeah.
and and maybe you could have gotten away with the first gen if it was the second gen. The uh Ford Taurus that was really bulbous,
Mhm.
which I had one. Like the replacement for that one probably could have been a better whatever.
Right.
But that second generation Liberty, much more in line with what the XJ was, right? A
Yeah.
very very squared design,
Mhm.
very a lot of things that made sense in the next version.
Right.
And then they have since stopped making that and went back to the Cherokee name, which is problematic because of the Native American tribe.
Mhm.
And with fair, that's that the Native Americans have a fair, a good argument, like you making
Mhm.
money off of our name.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
so it disappeared. That Liberty just kind of vanished into the ether, and
Yeah.
you don't see a lot of them anymore. They're just went away.
Yeah. If memory serves, and I may be completely wrong, but seem to recall that the gas mileage on the Liberty was just catastrophically bad. I remember
um,
like 13, 14 miles to the gallon on a small pint-sized SUV.
yeah,
I don't
I
know if it
don't.
was that bad, but I do remember specifically one of the big slams that it had was, why am I driving this dinky little thing that gets the gas mileage that a huge gas guzzler gets, you know? It just, I have to check that, but that's
Yes.
sticking in my mind as being true.
What I do know is it went from the venerable inline 4-liter 6-cylinder engine to the Pentastar V6s, which,
Yeah,
if my memory serves, were not as reliable
yeah.
as the like that 4-liter. there's there's it's going to be cockroach and share in that 4-liter engine still running. It's after the apocalypse. Anyway, your turn.
My turn. Okay, so I'm gonna go to slightly obscure territory here. Uh, from 2009 to 2013, Suzuki made the Kizashi. which was
Oh,
a
yeah.
interestingly sized, like not compact, not mid-size, somewhere in between, four-door sedan, definitely sporty looking.
Yep.
The design language on the car was fine. Everything else just wasn't. Suzuki was on its way out in the US
Yeah.
market, so they were being sold through Hyundai dealers. And it wasn't an expensive car. So people were coming in and going, that's cute. Wait, how much? No, I'm just gonna buy a Hyundai.
Mhm.
That was problem number one. Problem number two was that they had the world's funniest recall, and it kind of tarnished the reputation. I don't know if you remember this.
No, I'm.
There was a condenser connected with the fuel system, like near or on the fuel tank. The way that it was built, it actually encouraged spiders to move in and build webs. And yeah, the car was recalled because of spider web problems. Seriously, what would happen is the spiders would jam up this condenser. It would cause pressure to build in the fuel tanks until they ruptured or exploded.
That's bad.
That is bad. That is
Yeah.
bad. Spiders are usually our friends. I'm a big person who's like, don't squash the spider. It eats all sorts of bugs we really don't like.
Right.
But when they're making a home in your gas tank, that's a bad thing. That made the news, and it was sort of a funny thing. And I think that this poor car never really had a chance. And then that just sort of put the nail in the coffin. And it was too
And,
bad because dynamically it drove well. It
it was
was, like I
all-wheel
said,
drive, wasn't it?
yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting car in a segment that is generally not very interesting. And I thought Suzuki did a nice job with it. It's just, it never had a chance. So it wasn't even that they missed the mark. It's that they got the arrow into the sling. And you ever seen anybody who doesn't know how to shoot an arrow? They pull it back and the arrow just kind of, that would be me. Uh, that's what happened. The arrow never really made the shot. It was just, and it's too bad. Every now and then I see an older one on the road and I can't help but think it's kind of a cool car. I love the size of it, for one thing.
Mhm.
But just a sad story of a car that missed.
I'm going to be wide-ranging here. I think, and that people can say what they want about this. I think that the current generations of Mercedes are missing the mark. And to a lesser extent BMW, and I know you're a BMW owner, but
Mhm.
I feel like certainly Mercedes, I don't think their looks are very good. I don't think their um, engineering. I think that they've wasted opportunities on their EVs.
Mhm.
I, in terms of packaging and all sorts of other things, I, you know, they've had some misses where they took a V8 and heaved it out of one car and put a turbo 4 in it and was like, really, that's what you want to do? That may be too much of a yeah, I just there's not any I mean there used to be Mercedes that I go, oh my God, I'd love to have that.
Right.
You
Right.
know, that one of the E classes from the second generation with the oval headlights. I saw one the other day. I'm like, that's just a beautiful car,
Right.
and
Right.
like even a little bit before that, the Bruno Sacco designs, the classic S class, that the same with that E class of that same period.
Mhm.
The all those cars are just gorgeous, and I don't think that they've come anywhere close to that since then. And I feel like they just keep going down and down and down, and the there's nothing about the design I like. I'm sure that they're fine. I've not driven one. I can't make any claims about that. But just to look at them, I'm like, eh. There's maybe
Right.
one or two. There's a couple of the SUVs that I think are nice looking, but most of the part, I'm like, nope, nope, not interested.
Yeah.
So
I, Mercedes has always been the brand that, oh, they come out with something that I'm sort of mildly interested in, and then I check out how much it costs, and it's always just really prohibitively expensive. And we all know that Mercedes, it's one of the most expensive cars to just keep running, you know.
Mhm.
They're very pricey to just keep on the road. There are people who live and die by their Mercedes. I'll be honest, our neighbors across the street are an all Mercedes family. That's the only marque they buy. And okay, they're great, but I think I'm with you on that. I don't think they stand out nearly as much as they should
Mhm.
for a car that costs that much. BMW, one could argue, has, you know, there's there's definitely a flavor that goes with the BMW. It's not everybody's favorite taste, but when you buy a BMW, you get a BMW, you know. I think they are sort of on the ridge of going down that same road.
Yeah.
I'm anxious to see what the Neue Klasse has to stand for, you know, whether or not that brings some new excitement back. But on the flip side, the BMW sedans will always be a BMW sedan. And Mercedes has some nice sedans. They're not the same thing. They're just not. The sporting intentions aren't there.
Right.
It's just, yeah. So to that end, I've always just felt that they're massively expensive cars, and that's my real detractor. And I just think if you're going to blow that kind of money on a car, it's got to be really, really, really special. And I agree with you. I don't think Mercedes right now is doing anything that really knocks my socks off.
Mhm.
Nice, sure. Beautiful on the inside, I bet. Probably great to drive, but none of them are making me go, wow, I gotta have that, you know? I got one more. I'll make this quick because it's in the process of missing the mark. It's something that's unfolding as we speak, and I think it is going to go down.
Live in vivo, live
Yep,
as we
live
speak.
as it's happening right now, and I have no doubt that in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be just known as that big, catastrophic. What were they thinking? Missing the mark. We've talked about it before. The Tesla Cybertruck. I think we're witnessing one of those things. We are, as it's happening right now. And with all of these cars that we mentioned, let's go all the way back to the Edsel. There were some people who loved the Edsel and thought it was the most beautiful thing they'd ever laid their eyes on. There was not a lot of people. They certainly weren't of the majority. I think that's where we are with the Cybertruck. I just think it misses on so many levels, so many. It's one person's idea of what a cool new car should look like. And he's wrong. He's just wrong. I saw one again in town just over the weekend, and I was with Bill, and I said, Bill, that's a Cybertruck. And he goes, what the hell is that? I was like, it's a Cybertruck. And he goes, that's a car? Like, it has wheels, you know. He's like, stop. I want to look at this. I want to look at this. And so we slowed down, and he was like, holy crap, that's ugly. And I'm like, yeah, you're never going to get any further than that. And it goes beyond just that it's styled crazy. It's a pickup truck, and it's not really,
And to some degree or another, it fails at being a pickup truck.
right, of course.
Right?
It's got a tiny little bed with a cantilever thing, and it's like, right. It's also for me a massive disappointment because as much as I'm ambivalent more or less on Tesla, I think for every good thing you can say about a Tesla, there's a bad thing, you know. But I do think that they've done a great job in terms of getting people into electric vehicles, you know, especially their Model 3, because after rebates and whatnot, and having a good charging network and all those things, it's really not a bad option. And their new model is that.
Which it would be one thing if it just was, if it existed, but it sucked all these resources out of the company.
Mhm.
And, and for what? You know, where and Jeff and I went around and around on Tesla a couple weeks ago, and it was, you know, so now, they've laid off people. That's what you have to do. We could argue how they did it, fine.
Mhm.
But they were supposed to be building a $25,000 EV,
Right.
right? And that's not happening. They're focusing on uh self-driving cars and robo-taxis. And my point on the robo-taxi is like, uh, you it's going to be an urban play, right?
Mhm.
But
Right.
how many, it's not going to work. I don't think it's going to work in LA. It might work in New York, Chicago, maybe downtown Miami.
Right.
But you don't have to go. I'm like, whatever. Go
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
and go back and look at that episode, because we go on for a while. Um,
Right. Right.
and I'll say this again. I did say this in the old one at last episode, was when I think of the robo taxi, I think of humans being put on a Roomba and just moved. Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
You have to change out the dirt compartment when you're done. That's
Cleaning,
part.
you know, transporting people and cleaning the streets at the same time. It's a
Right.
twofer. That would be our show for this evening. Thank you for joining us and listening us go on. If you have cars that you think missed the mark, you can leave them in the comments below on our YouTube page. Give us a like and subscribe. That would be helpful to us. Weird cars, that car that you think that everyone else says that's a miss, and you say, I like it. That's a weird car. Send us a picture, send us a little description, and let us know what you're thinking. And that you can send that to dstewart@fox61.com. We want to thank all our viewers. You guys have been great. We are available on Fox 61 Plus, our OTT for industry cognoscenti. And we're on the Fox 61 Plus Monday through Friday at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And we're also on WGRZ Plus out of Buffalo. So, hey to Buffalo.
Hey,
Um, and
I want to send this out to the folks of Tonawanda, specifically North Tonawanda. I've been there. I've been there. Lovely town. Lovely town. I
yeah,
just like the name Tonawanda.
Tonawanda.
Just sounds like a battle cry. Tonawanda.
All right, that's it for tonight. Jeff will return. Jeff has a very busy schedule, um, and so he will return. He misses being here and wishes everyone the best. Um, anyway, all right. See y'all.
Bye.